You're listening to Book Banter with Dianne Burckhardt, your book talk podcast. Join me every Wednesday for real conversations with authors and publishing insiders, where you get to connect with the humans behind the books you love. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is May 13th, 2026, and today we are stepping into the high-pressure world of international sports, investigative journalism, political tension, and a terrifying crisis unfolding during the 2040 Summer Olympics in Doha. My author guest is uniquely qualified to create a believable world around the realities of journalism, the global spectacle surrounding the Olympic Games, and what could happen when 12 athletes suddenly vanish in the middle of one of the largest international sporting events on Earth. What makes this conversation especially fascinating is that today's guest didn't just create this world from pure imagination. He has spent decades covering professional sports and the Olympic movement as an award-winning journalist, giving him a first-hand understanding of the pressure, politics, media chaos, and the international atmosphere surrounding events on this scale. His experience brings a touch of reality to his incredible thrilling fiction. So let's not waste any more time. Please welcome to Book Banter with Dianne Burckhardt, Joe Battaglia. The way that I like to start these episodes is just to have my guest tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Joe Battaglia, and I'm the author of Beneath the Rings.
But you also have a very long career as a journalist.
Yeah, I've worked in sports journalism since I was 18 years old. Started working for the New York Star-Ledger newspaper in New Jersey. And I did that for 13 years and then transitioned to NBC Olympics, where I was the track and field producer for the Beijing Summer Olympics. I was the alpine skiing producer for the Winter Olympics in 2010 Vancouver.
Oh, wow.
From there, I went to Universal Sports, which was at the time, NBC's kind of year-round Olympic arm. And I continued to do track and field and alpine and marathon. And then NBC folded Universal Sports right before the 2012 Olympics. So I went back to being the track and field producer for London in 2012. And then I also did alpine for Sochi in 2014. And then after that, I went to Flow Sports, where I was the director of content first, and then the VP of editorial for Mile Split, which was the high school track and field division. So stayed within track pretty much my whole 9 years at Flow Sports.
What is it that's so appealing about sports journalism for you?
It changes every day. When I started doing high school and college sports at the New York Star-Ledger, I was, covering different teams, different sports, traveling all over the state of New Jersey, amplifying those high school sports, built up girls volleyball and swimming pretty big during my time there. And that was a lot of fun, and grassroots cover a lot of athletes. One of my neatest stories was the very first sporting event I covered for a byline was the Essex County Cross Country Championships, and it was run at Branchbrook Park, right by where I grew up, and I covered a race that was won by Hazel Clark for Columbia High School. And I continued to follow her career through her collegiate running at the University of Florida, and then she made the Olympic team alongside her sister and her sister-in-law. And then she made the Olympic team again in 2008 when I started working at NBC. So we continued to connect there, and she's been a lifelong friend. We did a neat collaboration when she was in charge of sports tourism for the Bermuda Tourism Authority. We put on cross-country and track and field meets where we brought athletes from the U.S. over to compete against Bermudan athletes. And, those things are, to me, are priceless. Those kind of relationships.
Definitely.
Yeah, I wouldn't have traded that experience for anything.
That's an incredible networking experience to be able to meet somebody and follow them for pretty much their whole career.
Yep. Right from when she was in high school right through to an Olympic team. So it's pretty rare.
So now at some point you decide that you want to try and write a book. But the first one that you wrote was for kids.
Yeah, yeah. So in February of 2014, I was laid off from Flow Sports, and I had a lot of time on my hands suddenly, and I was sitting here at my desk, like wondering, all right, what am I going to do? And I was looking at this picture on my desk of my daughter, and just thought back to how when she was learning her alphabet, she had all different kinds of alphabet books, but there was never a track and field themed alphabet book. I mean, you can go on Amazon and find them for every sport under the sun, even some team specific ones for, pro sports, but there wasn't a track and field one. And I thought, well, that would be a neat thing to try to do. And so I sat down and kind of put that together, starting with like, okay, who are my, 26 athletes A to Z, and making sure that had the balance between international athletes and American athletes and men and women and different sporting groups. And once I did that, then I sat down to come up with like 2 sentences for each athlete that kind of encapsulated why they're among the greatest in the sport, and then have it rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
And so I self-published that book, and I learned a lot from that. And I think it got my juices sort of going, and gave me the confidence to sit down and write the novel that my parents have begged me to do since I was young, and just never really had the time to do because I was working full time, from when I was a teenager right through to traveling around the world to these track and field meets and these marathons and all of that stuff. And, when are you going to squeeze in novel writing, in between all of that? So that was sort of a good icebreaker for me.
How long do you think it actually took you to bring that book completely together?
Beneath the Rings?
The ABC book.
The ABC book came together really quick. I mean, I had that pretty much done in a week.
Oh, wow.
That did not take long at all. The hardest part was just narrowing down my list of 26 athletes and making sure that like they were connected to a letter of the alphabet. And then, once I did that, I mean, I was familiar enough with all of these athletes' careers that having the context of the 2 sentences wasn't really that hard. It was just figuring out a hook to make those 2 sentences sort of rhyme.
Would you want to do any more children's books?
I don't know. If I did, it would be totally different. It wouldn't be an alphabet book. It would be some other themed book. But I don't know if I want to go there again. Especially after writing Beneath the Rings, I think tackling that meatier, like more mature content, sort of appeals to me more now. But I'll never say never.
Not only sports journalism, you've also covered news and politics. And, I did headline news. And the one thing that I was really surprised about, nobody ever explained to me in journalism school how depressing doing hard news can be.
It is depressing. I had the actual opposite experience when I was in college. My journalism professors actually poo-pooed sports journalism and said that if you weren't covering courthouses or, police blotters or that sort of thing, then like you really weren't a real journalist. And that was kind of a turnoff to me because I had already started working as a stringer really to start in sports. And that was kind of where my passion was going. And I kind of got disenfranchised to school and really put more, and I feel like I learned more on the job than I did in the classroom. And if I'm being completely honest, I did the bare minimum at that point to just get my degree and get out. My dad wanted to slap me upside the head with my motto, D equals diploma. But just hearing that from a professor just kind of turned me off.
Mm-hmm. With your book, Beneath the Rings, you actually kind of combine news and politics and sports with some very real heavy world issues. Does writing something like this make it easier for you to deal with those topics when you're creating the world yourself?
A little bit. I mean, when I set out to write Beneath the Rings, I knew that I wanted to set it like in the Olympic setting because that's the world I've lived for a long time and really familiar with. And I started writing and I got about 5 chapters deep and, I'm kind of ready to introduce the bad guys, and kind of dawned on me that at that point I'm no geopolitical expert, but I knew that I wanted to sort of root that group and their radicalization, defranchisation, in some real world, conflict in history. And so I stopped writing and like went into research mode and, spent a couple months just doing my due diligence and research on the Middle East and some of the pivotal conflicts and figuring out like, okay, like this could be a sentinel moment in history where I could tie this back to this individual and say like, yeah, this is where they kind of went off the rails. And once I did that and kind of felt grounded enough with that material, like I was able to go back and start writing again. And that's a little bit of a different experience for me. Like I don't know that I've ever started writing about a topic and had to stop and do research midstream. Usually when I was writing even a long form sports feature or profile, I was familiar with the subject and did my research up front before I even like got to the interview process and, started pulling more material out. So that was a bit of a different experience for me.
Now, your book is set around the 2040 Olympics. Did you choose that setting because it's something you're so familiar with, or because of the broad spectrum that you could use with all of the different countries being there, allowing like so many different political aspects coming into this to kind of feed the thriller aspect?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons why I chose Doha as the setting. One, I wanted to set this high stakes thriller in a fictional Olympic setting, and I didn't want to do it like post dated. I wanted and write something that was more historical fiction. I wanted to future date it. I didn't want it so far into the future that you wouldn't even recognize the Olympic movement or an iPhone or anything crazy like that.
People will be expecting flying cars and that kind of thing.
Exactly, right? Like not too futuristic. And so I set it in 2040, so that's several Olympics out. And I chose Doha for a few reasons. One, I've had the opportunity to go there 3 times for track and field events, and I absolutely love the city. It's got this unbelievable combination of modernity, and this new architecture and these state-of-the-art sporting venues and like this old world part of town with a souk market that's unbelievable and mosques and ancient architecture. And so I felt like I would be able to sort of contrast the glittering venues and the shadowy back alleys in my writing there.
Mm-hmm.
And then Doha is also super involved in hosting international sporting events. They've had the World Cup. Like I said, they've hosted track and field world championships. There's a Diamond League international track and field meet there every year. There's been international swimming events, gymnastics events. They've hosted the Asian Games. They're bidding for Olympics. I mean, it would not surprise me least if Doha wound up with the 2040 Olympic or one of these that is up for grabs. So it made a lot of sense for me to do that. And then it was also easier for me to sort of bring in the kidnapping event, which I did tie that a little bit back historically to the 72 Munich massacre.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that's something that hasn't happened in 68 years, thank God. But if we suspended disbelief about security and all the things that happen at the Olympics, could it happen? Yeah, maybe. If it's going to happen, where's it going to happen? Probably in the Middle East.
In Beneath the Rings, you deal with institutions staying silent in the face of wrongdoing. Have you ever personally experienced this in your journalism career?
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of that happens all the time in international sports. I think sometimes Olympic ideals clash with real world tensions. Mm-hmm. And I think that's sort of the beauty of the Olympics, right? It has this unfiltered soul where you contrast the magic of human sporting achievement and the gritty realities of politics and ethics and global tensions. Mm-hmm. I've witnessed some of that firsthand, not so much maybe, in my Olympic coverage, but some of my Olympic sports coverage, particularly in track and field. Mm-hmm. And so beyond the thrill of the conspiracy and the chase that happens here, I wanted people to, come away reflecting on how sport can expose those truths, but also bridge divides and inspire resilience, because I feel like that's what the real Olympic Games do. And that sort of would help shape the story.
Oh, definitely. Now, your veteran journalist is a woman and you place her in a setting like Qatar. Was there a specific reason for that choice, especially given the environment she's working in?
Yeah, I rooted Nova in a couple different ways. I wanted her to be from Newark, New Jersey, because that's where I grew up. So, first and foremost, I wanted to tie back something deeply personal, and having her hail from a section of the city that's a middle class Jewish sort of part of the town and a community with a lot of resilience. So, that like helped shape her. I've got a really good friend named Alan Abrahamson, who was our columnist at NBC Olympics, but he's also spent many years as an independent Olympic journalist. He's got his own website called Three Wire Sports, which was sort of my inspiration for making Nova a independent journalist with her own website, which was a Lynn Paulson the book.
I like the name, by the way.
Yeah. I was like, I got to get clever here and come up with something. So I think that was one inspiration there, like somebody that's a good friend of mine. I wanted her to be female because I think if I use a male character, I mean, everybody probably could have sniffed out that Alan was an inspiration. So I partly did not want to do that. But, I also look at Nova's grit and drew a little bit from Lara Logan and, some of what she went through in Egypt in 2011. And then I'm looking for some tenacity, right? And so some historical figures like Nellie Bly and Ida Tarbell come into play. And I also wanted bits and pieces of some pioneering women journalists then, in the sports world, like Helene Elliott and Leslie Visser, and just blending all of those elements created Nova and like forged her into the character that she was in the book.
So now, for listeners who haven't picked it up yet, can you go ahead and give us a more complete overview of Beneath the Rings?
I can. So, like I mentioned earlier, Beneath the Rings is a high stakes thriller. It's set at the 20 Doha Olympics, which, are the first ever hosted in the Middle East. Veteran journalist Nova Mendelsohn, she's a sharp, no nonsense Olympic insider. She stumbles into a nightmare when 12 athletes, six from Israel and six from Lebanon, are kidnapped in this brazen midnight raid. Ransom demands soar and ancient vendettas explode, and Nova races through the venues of Doha and the back alleys of the town to unravel the conspiracy before the world's eyes, kind of go from celebration to catastrophe. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
One thing that I thought was really interesting was you have a very simple dedication at the front of your book.
Yeah, for mom.
Was it a surprise or did she know that was coming?
She had no idea it was coming. My mom is an avid reader, and she was a school teacher when I was growing up and really emphasized reading for me and my sister. I remember growing up, we would spend our summers in Florida, and, we always had school reading lists that we had to get through before the summer was out. And we would go to the beach in the morning and come home and have lunch. And then, we had to read after lunch. Otherwise, we weren't going back to the beach in the afternoon. And on top of our school reading that we had, we would always go to the public library in Fort Pierce, Florida, and check out more books and read. And to this day, my mom's 80 and she can't stop reading. Like when we go on a family vacation, and she'll go through 3, 4 books in a week and a half. She reads like it's a job. And so, that on top of her and my dad always pushing me to write a book made it a no-brainer to have a dedication to mom at the beginning.
So what does she think of your book?
She liked it. She got one of the first copies, and she didn't power read it. She took her time going through it, and there were some things like towards the end that she had some questions about, but overall she thought it was good.
Now that you have this long career as a journalist and you're stepping into being an author, where are you right now? Are you still working in journalism at all, or have you already made that transition to full-time book writing?
I wouldn't say I've made a transition into full-time book writing. I'm not working in journalism currently. I'm actually looking for some more full-time employment. I think just financially, like that's what makes sense for my family.
Hmm.
But I haven't ruled out writing another book. I'm currently working on some potential screen adaptation of Beneath the Rings. I'd like to pitch Beneath the Rings as something for the big screen or limited series or, on a streaming platform or something like that.
This would be the kind of action thriller that would be perfect for that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that wasn't my goal when I set out to write it, but after finishing it and reading the finished product, again, after we went through the edit process, it sort of dawned on me that, yeah, this might make for a good screen adaptation. And I've got a friend that I went to high school with that works in the business and sent him a copy and, he agreed. And so, yeah, that's something that I'm working on right now. But in terms of writing, I haven't, started writing anything new. I haven't decided.
Do you think there will be more of Nova and her world, or do you want to maybe venture into something completely different?
That I haven't decided. I've there, without giving too much away, like if I wanted to go back to Nova and Nova's world, I can, just the way Beneath the Rings ends. But I haven't decided if I want to go there or do something completely different. I've sketched out some ideas for what a return to Nova's world could look like, but nothing too in depth or crazy yet.
Well, one thing that's really nice about a character like that, with her being in journalism, you can take her in so many different directions.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's true. I think one thing that's maybe a little bit limiting is her age.
Hmm.
She's covered at this point 14 Olympics or whatever the number was, and it's like, okay, well, is she going to keep doing that, or is she going to branch away from sports and, like you said, like, take another journalistic avenue, which she certainly could. So it's kind of open there. I don't know that at her age, again, without like giving too much away, I don't know if she can endure any more than she endured in Beneath the Rings. Continuing to chase down stuff like this in the sports realm, but I don't know.
This seems like the perfect time to do our 5 quick questions that never turn out to be quick, but I hold out eternal hope that it will happen someday.
Okay.
So, for you, we have the sports edition. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Question 1. If you had to give up one sport and never be able to watch it again, what would it be?
Soccer.
Wow, that was quick.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate soccer for what it is, but like I've never been a huge soccer fan.
Oh, wow. That's really funny. You started in sports at 17. So did I, working for a sports magazine covering soccer.
Okay. Okay.
Question 2. What sport would you rather play than watch?
That's a good one. Probably volleyball. I like watching volleyball.
Hmm.
My daughter and I, have season tickets to Texas A&M women's volleyball, and they just won the national championship this past season. And she's 7 and she plays, just starting out, and she loves it. But I think it would be a lot more fun to play than watch. It's fast paced, it's exciting, it's explosive. I like those aspects of it.
So, question 3. Who is the nicest sports figure you have ever interviewed?
Bob Beamon. Bob is the 1968 Olympic long jump champion. I got to know Bob really well doing a documentary film on him for FlowTrack, and got to tell a unique story that a lot of people didn't know. Everybody knows about his magic leap and setting the Olympic record. It still stands. Nobody's come close to it.
Wow.
Since Mexico City. But before the Olympic Games, he was competing for Texas Southern, which is now UTEP, and protested, civil rights protest, competing against BYU and in Utah for their the Mormon stance at that time against African Americans. And he lost his scholarship, got thrown out of school basically, and lost all his training avenues and pretty much everything. The rug pulled out and from underneath him before the Olympic trials. And that's a story that really wasn't told. And so got to tell that. We went back to UTEP with Bob and interviewed his old coach and some of his teammates at UTEP, and really got to the bottom of that story and got to know him really well. And he's an amazing guy. He plays music. He's into jazz, and a really, really great guy. I wish more people got to know him because he's just fabulous.
Definitely sounds like you made an impression.
Yeah, he did. He really did. I didn't know much about that story before I went in, and boy, did I learn a lot. Just through the interview process, we did, I don't know, something like a 4-hour sit down on camera interview for this piece.
Wow.
With him on top of the auxiliary interviews that we did, like with his teammates and his coach. And yeah, it's really amazing. I actually have an autographed picture of Bob in my office and a ticket from the Mexico City Olympics, the session that he set the Olympic record. Yeah, he talked about people that have made an impact. Yeah, he made an impact.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yep. Not a quick answer, sorry.
That's why these are never quick.
I know.
So question 4. Who is a sports figure you wish you had been able to interview but never had the opportunity?
Ooh. That's a good one too. I've interviewed so many people. I'm like going through the Rolodex. Who did I not get to interview? I met him at a track meet, but it was really informal and he wasn't doing interviews and didn't get to interview him. But Lou Zamperini, he, again, another amazing story, was an Olympic runner and went to war in World War II and was shot down and in the Pacific and survived on a raft. They made a movie about his life. It's amazing. I would have loved to have the opportunity to interview him and get to know him a bit, but yeah, I just got to meet him and shake his hand.
That's incredible, though. It's like, I feel like I should be on Family Feud going, ooh, good answer, good answer.
Right?
Now, your final question. We're asking everyone the same question this season because we're making a list that's going to go in our Book Banter year-end book buying guide for the holidays to give people ideas for buying books for gifts this year. Okay. So question 5, what book to movie adaptation do you think has been the best that you have seen so far?
Book to adaptation. Was it a movie adaptation? Does it have to be a movie adaptation or could it be a limited series adaptation?
Oh, that works too.
Okay, I'm going to go with a limited series adaptation. And I think I have 2 in mind, and I think they both were adaptations. Yeah, I'll go with this one. I'm going to go with November 22nd, 1963. Stephen King book, and it was adapted into a limited series. I think it might be on Netflix now. It wasn't originally. I think it is on Netflix now. But it kind of follows a character that goes through a time portal to try to stop the Kennedy assassination.
Oh, yeah.
And the adaptation was surprisingly close to the book. It was really, really good. That's a sleeper one of mine. But yeah, I think I would go to that one. I would recommend people read the book and then watch the series. I think it's 8 episodes or something like that. It came out in 2016.
So I need to see if I can find that on any of the streaming services here in Germany because I haven't been able to find it yet, but every once in a while somebody will mention it to me again. I think, oh, I need to look again, see if it's where I can see it yet. I may just break down and buy it.
It's streaming on Netflix now here in the US. I don't know about Germany, but I watched it when it originally came out, and I forget where I watched it originally, if it was on Amazon or somewhere else, but it was produced by J.J. Abrams, and he did like I said, he did a great job. It was on Hulu originally, and I recently watched it again with my wife, and we watched it on Netflix.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see if I can find that this weekend.
Yeah, it's good. James Franco is the lead. He's awesome in it. It's really good.
So now tell our listeners where they can find more information on you and your books.
Okay, my website is booksbybattaglia.com. I think one of the things that would be great for people that want to learn more about the characters that are in this book There are about 15 blog posts with like backstories on all the characters. So I didn't really bog the narrative down in the book with a ton of backstory. But if you want it, you got it. It's there. And it's got links to where you can purchase the book. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Apple Books, everywhere you can get your books online. Hardcover, paperback, Kindle, Apple Book,
And we should point out that people can also go to independent bookstores and request that they get it in for them.
Yes, that would be amazing. That's been a struggle, honestly, is kind of getting it into some independent bookstores. Even for me locally, I've gone to a couple, and there's one in town that I'm working with right now that is doing like a local authors month, and like we were able to get the book in there. And then there was another one that like took one book and said, see you later. So yeah, go to your independent bookstore and request it. We would love to get it in to more places.
And people can also request them at their local libraries too.
Yes, one of the things that I learned from the alphabet book and made sure we applied for Beneath the Rings was doing the paperwork for getting the book and the title into the Library of Congress. So we have that number, so it's very easy for libraries to request it and get it in.
And as always, we will be sure to put in the description of today's podcast all of your information and links to your social media, so it will be very easy for people to find you and your work so they can just click and go and buy your book.
Yes, please do.
This has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
So there you have it, folks. That was my conversation with the incredible Joe Battaglia. If you are looking for a thriller packed with international intrigue, then Beneath the Rings is definitely one that you're going to want to check out. Considering Joe spent decades covering global sporting events as a journalist, the realism in this story is incredibly compelling. Be sure to follow him on social media so you don't miss out on what's coming next for him. Now, next week, we're going to be shifting gears just a little bit as we sit down with Sonia Daccarat, author of The Roots of the Guava Tree, a memoir exploring identity, family, culture, immigration, and growing up as the daughter of a Christian Palestinian father and a Jewish mother. We had a wonderful conversation, and she was incredibly easy to talk to. I think you're really going to enjoy hearing about her experiences growing up and how her memoir came to be. And now for a quick update on Burckhardt Books and Book Banter Productions. On the podcast and magazine side of things, we are gearing up to attend the Frankfurter Book Messe this year in October. So if you are an author, agent, publisher, publicist, anyone involved in the publishing industry who is planning to attend the Book Messe this year, we would love the opportunity to be able to interview you live on the convention floor. Be sure to reach out so that we can schedule a time to get together during the event. Now, over on the Burckhardt book side, make sure you are following us on our Facebook page because we are beginning to roll out character spotlights and behind-the-scenes information for the upcoming Haunted Hearts Paranormal Romance series. And you might not be aware of this, but we actually have 2 Facebook pages, one for the Burckhardt book side of things and one for the Book Banter production side of things. So if you're wanting to check out the books, you need to follow us on Burckhardt Books Facebook page. Be sure to check the link directly to our Burckhardt Books Facebook page. In the description of today's podcast, and the first book of our Haunted Hearts series, Langston Watch Hotel, is tentatively scheduled for release this October, and we are starting early to introduce readers to the cast, the mysteries, the paranormal investigations, and the haunted world behind the series before the first book officially launches. And if you would like to find out more about this Haunted Hearts series, check out our Season 5, Episode 216 podcast takeover episode with Sebastian Duo-Russell, where he interviewed D.S. Stevens all about this new paranormal romance series we're developing that is based on actual ghost hunting adventures that the author went on in college. Well, I think that's enough for today, folks. So you know what that means. It's time for you all to go forth and be really happy. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe to Book Banter with Dianne Burckhardt on your favorite podcast streaming service. Because if you love books like we do, you do not want to miss a single episode of this podcast.